All right, welcome everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. My name is Jimmy Wu, and I will be your host today with my sidekick here, Jess. So we're just getting, it's right now, it's 10 a.m. Pacific, and I'm just seeing quite a few people still trickling in. So why don't we do a couple housekeeping as people start rolling in, and then we'll start getting into the bulk of things. So Jess, I just want to confirm that can you see my screen?
I can.
And you can hear me properly. Okay, I'm
I can.
assuming. Okay, awesome. Great. Um, okay, so let's start the recording. Awesome. Okay. So, welcome everyone, and thank you for coming to today's session to talk about tips and tricks about creating and planning your projects. I'm Jimmy Wu. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing here at Function Point, and I'm here with Jess Bird, who's our Customer Success Manager. Hopefully, some of you have worked with Jess as well, or myself. Um, but a couple quick housekeeping items. So if this is the first time you're joining GoToWebinar, on your GoToWebinar control panel, there is a questions tab. So you will be able to, throughout the webinar, if you have any questions that just pops into your head, don't hesitate to ask by typing your question in there. Jess and I will do our best to go through as much of them as possible today.
Maybe if one of you on the line wants to just send me a test one just to make sure it's working. I saw Sarah in there and Pierre. Maybe one of you could do me a favor and just shoot me a question and just to make sure that I'm getting them. That'd be great.
Awesome. We are also recording the webinar. So if you would like to share with your colleagues or review it afterwards, you will get that. And we will also be sending a follow-up email as always with the recording link and the deck that we have. Okay. And thank you, Sarah. I'm sure Jess appreciated it. There you go. So let's jump into the agenda for today. So we're going to talk about a little bit of preparation before you start your project plan. We'll take a few minutes. So for any first timers that is not using the schedules in Function Point yet, just a quick 5-minute walkthrough of what that looks like. And then we'll talk about different scenarios and what are some tips and tricks we can use to address and make adjustments to each scenario. And then, of course, if we have time at the end, we'll do a Q&A session. Okay, so let's jump in. So before your project plan, I always like to, I personally, when our marketing team at Function Point uses Function Point to manage all of our marketing projects as well. And the first thing I always tell my team is, before you create any projects, think about what is your end goal. This is the number one thing. Is your end goal, to get a repeat customer or long-term customer? Is your end goal to, be as profitable as possible? Is it to just quickly get something done because it's a rush job, or all of the above? Is this more of an in-house job that you want to, make it fun and keep your team engaged? Things like that. So think about what the end goal for your project is, because a lot of times when you are stuck about, okay, who should I assign it to? Who should be working on this? The end goal is going to give you that answer. Okay. And the second one that I also like to keep in mind, so as a leader, being the project manager, being the leader of the team, you want to think about, from a high level, what are some of the characteristic and culture of the team that you're working with? Not just on, and I don't mean by an individual basis. You should always know, of course, each person is unique, but some companies, they're more corporate, like they wear suits and ties. I'm not saying any of us are, but there are companies like that out there still. But then there are also other companies where the teams are working from home versus working in the office, maybe a mix of both now after COVID. So think about that characteristic and culture, because again, when you are creating that project plan, a lot of times your answers will be right there. Once you think about the problems will have answers once you start thinking about these two things, your project end goal and the culture and characteristic of your team. All right, so let's go through a quick walkthrough of function points scheduling. So let's go ahead. So for the benefit of everyone who has not had used function point scheduling, I've now created a job here, 30361, which is a sample Black Widow movie production. So I'm hoping everyone understands how to start a job. If you would like to understand that, there's always our help center, but we also have previous webinars that talks about job creation process. Okay, so we got a new job coming in. I didn't put any budget to this job, but let's go ahead and create a schedule plan. So when I create a schedule, there's two ways. I can create it from scratch, or I can use a template. Okay, so I'm gonna create it from scratch in this case, so that you can see how you can, from the very, very beginning. So when you create it from scratch, it would actually automatically pull all the line items you have on the service. So in this case, on my all the services on your estimate. So on my estimate, I can see the research, sketching, design, copy, production, project management, SEM management. So each of these line item is a separate task. And then you'll be able to, and they're all grouped together under what we call a task group. So task group can have multiple tasks within it. So instead of the grid view that we're looking at right now, we can also go into the Gantt view as well. The the biggest difference between the two is that the grid view is more of a traditional list view. It can do a little bit more, but then the Gantt view is more of a high level visual view that you can also share. So if you're a fan of waterfall view, which is great for large campaigns and jobs, this is kind of the way you can go. And this is the part where you can do drag and drops in between the tasks and timeline as well. So you can quickly set different timelines. You can also drag and drop between the tasks to add dependencies. And in the case that you have multiple dependencies, we can do multiple tasks being dependent on one predecessor. So this is more of the Gantt view. The Gantt view can be shared to a PDF or a web link, and you can actually pick and choose which of these line items you want to share or not share. So for example, if I want to share the entire schedule, I can just click on that, and it'll open up a link. And this is a static link. Okay. So this is a static link, but that you can export to a PDF or to a spreadsheet as well. Oh. So the Gantt view is great for setting the timeline and the visual. One quick thing, if this is a long-term versus short-term, we do have a weekly view versus a monthly view. So if this is a short-term that's only spans for a few weeks, I like to go to the weekly view instead. It's a little bit easier to see. But then if your timeline drags all the way to say end of the year, then of course the monthly view would definitely be a better way to go. So let's talk about the grid view real quick. And so the grid view is able to give you a little bit more options and ideas. So for instance, I can go in and let's say this has multiple phases, or I need to add some new tasks to it. So I can add, say this is a phase 2. And I might have a task. We need to post social media announcement. Okay. And this is where you can add instructions of the tasks. And here's an important part. You can now map this task to the service inside the job, which is pulled from your estimate. This is actually a very, very important step in your project planning, as this is going to tie back into the rate card. And as people track time against this task, it will automatically allocate the appropriate rate on that estimate. So this, and you definitely want to do that for the individuals. What that does is it gives you a little bit, it gives you much better control, and also takes some stress off of your team to make sure that they are tracking time towards the right rate category. Okay. So you can quickly assign to different individuals and then put a start date and also end date right on here too. So that's kind of a high level of how you can create a schedule inside function point. You can missed a couple columns here actually. So in here you can have the different statuses, but also the estimated hours here too. So I can say this will take you. You have 5 hours to complete this, and this is a high priority item. Now, as you create the project plan, I like to say when you create the project plan, keep everything in draft first, okay? By keeping all your tasks in draft, no one will get, your individuals will not be alerted, and they know that they don't need to work on it yet. It's kind of like a planning phase. Only until you're ready to start, you would be able to mark, you want to mark that as assigned, and that's when Jimmy, who's the assignee, will get an alert to start working on this. Okay. So that is kind of the schedule creation at a quick glance. So let's go into a certain few different scenarios, real life scenarios that people see. And so let's go through that. So the ones we're gonna go through, different scenarios are, I have a 6-month website project. How do I create a project plan quickly? Website is a very common deliverable. They take a lot of work, they take a lot of planning, and they often get delayed, as well as revisions. So how do we plan that properly? A second scenario is, this is a quick 1-day job. I'm just doing a quick turnaround for maybe a social media posting design. So how can I schedule this work quickly without needing to create a full-fledged schedule that's going to bog down, which is going to cause a lot of administrative time. Another scenario that people often ask is, I don't want, I created this beautiful project plan that helps me keep visualize where things are. However, people add tasks to the job to keep track of their own to-do. I want to still be able to see it as part of the job, but then I don't want that to mess up my original project plan. So how can I do that? The fourth one is I need to restart a chunk of work. Okay, I got, maybe, we had a rookie working on the design, and then unfortunately, there was a big mess up and we just need to redo the whole design phase completely. Or maybe there was a change order. They decided to create, 4 new web pages. So we're charging them a little bit more, but we need to now restart the design work for those 4 pages. So how can I duplicate things on my project plan easily? Last one is I budgeted for my jobs and tasks. So how can I monitor to ensure it is on track? So how can I take a look at what's the percentage completion versus the original budget on a job and a task level? So let's go through the first one. So I have a 6-month website project. How do I create that project plan quickly? So I've created a sample open job for a website. And websites typically have multiple phases. You got a research phase, you got a design phase, you got a development phase, and then of course you have a launch phase. So in this job, I have 30351, a budget of $11,000 or 110 hours of work. So let's go ahead and create a schedule plan. So the fastest way to create a project plan is always start with a template. Your template may not be exactly what you want, but you definitely want to start with the template. It will make your life a lot easier. You don't need to create everything from scratch. You can, and keep in mind, you can have as many schedule templates as you see fit. So if you do websites a lot, we know that there might be e-commerce website versus a simple 1-page website. So you can create a schedule template for each type of website that you do. In this case, I'm going to do this schedule with phases so you can see how we can adjust. So in this schedule with phases, what happens is I have created 3 different task groups: phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. So your task group is a great way to manage multiple phases. And I can just rename phase 1 to be research. Phase 2 might be design. Phase 3 is development. And maybe I forgot a phase. So let's go phase 4, launch. So now that I've got my different 4 phases, you can have different tasks within it. So here's a cool trick that I like to do when we talk about schedule templates. By creating a schedule template, you can have your tasks be defaulted as a shared task. So if you know you have a large team and you often need to assign to multiple people, have your schedule template be all shared tasks. So that way, as you select individuals to assign, you'll be able to assign as many people to it as you see fit. Okay. So I've now created this schedule. I can now go in and put the start date. And if you have a schedule template, your project plan is automatically populated. So you can see phase 1, my start date, end date is automatically populated. And it will default to today as well. Okay, so you don't have to manually make that adjustment. But if you do need to make that adjustment, you can always quickly drag and drop on here. One of the things that happen a lot though is if you're doing a large job, once you mark all the dependencies, there is an adjust dependent task when moving predecessors. So if you have that checked on, as you move the start versus the end, this is a great way to help you visualize, okay, if I had to delay this by a week, what's going to happen to the rest of my tasks? Okay. Or perhaps you only want to move 2 specific tasks. So you can just quickly select these ones and make that adjustment right on here. Okay. And there you can quickly select all or within a task group using the check marks on the left. Okay. So now that, let's go ahead and set my timeline for phase 2 here. Just very quickly do that here. Okay, so let's say I've now have phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, and I can see phase 3, I made a boo-boo, so let's go ahead and move phase 3 over. So the way task group is a great way to manage your different phases. So when you collapse it, you can see the length of each phase, and when you expand it, you'll be able to see the duration for each of the tasks instead. So, okay, so I've now created the schedule plan for the project. Now you want to start assigning it to different people, but you might, especially for something like a website project, you might know we're going to start the research phase this week, and you might know who is going to start working on it. So I've pre-assigned these tasks already to Jenny and Jimmy. However, for the second phase, for the design phase, I don't know who it is yet. So therefore, let's go ahead and just do a placeholder. This is a very useful workflow, is that I want to do a placeholder to my role, which is the designer team instead. So which includes different people like Beth, Carmen, Jenny, Jimmy, and Ross. So by putting it on the role level, it's going to update your work planning view for your resources. And it creates a great way for you to assign tasks to people. So in this case, if I scroll to the, let me extend this to the end of August. So if I scroll to the right, I can see on my designer totals, I have the designer team at the top here. And for the role, there are purple bars showing it is the different tasks that I've just created and assigned to the role. What that does is these individuals will not need to worry about it. Okay. However, that is going to allocate to your team's resource workload so that as other projects come in, you'll know how much workload your team has. And when you're ready to start that design phase, you can choose to either go back to the schedule view that we saw earlier to assign it, or if you're just trafficking, you can go in here and go ahead and mark it as assigned and put it to the individual that you want to work on it. So let's say Beth. So now Beth will get alerted of the task and to start working on it. So that's kind of the flow that I would, one of the ways that you can do in order to traffic and plan out your project and how they're tied together. So you can either have the schedule template assigned to an individual that you know will always work on it, which works great for smaller teams. But if you have a larger team, have your schedule templates be assigned to the role level instead. So that way, when that phase or that task is ready to start, it's going to first reflect in your resource work planning view for your workload, and you can quickly traffic and assign right on here as well. Okay. So that's scenario one. So for planning a large website projects inside Function Point. So let's go through scenario number two. But just before I go into the second scenario, any questions thus far that I can help with?
I'm just responding to Trishana. My gosh. Yeah, so I'm just responding to Trishana about the linking of tasks. So when we look about the Gantt view, so we would just really take that first task that's in the link and we would change that one from draft to assigned, and the other two would remain in that draft status. And then what will happen is as soon as that first task has been set to the status of complete, it will automatically trigger the next one in line to move into that assigned status and show up on that person's dashboard.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Jess.
No problem.
Okay, so let's go to scenario number two. So scenario number two is, so instead of a website large campaign, we're now doing a quick one-day job. So how can I schedule the work quickly? I don't want to go through, creating that full-fledged schedule that I just did here. So I've created another job that's maybe a logo design. And usually there's maybe 2-3 tasks max when it comes to logo design. We might need to do a little bit of research and on the target audience, and we just need to start working on the design and client approval. So instead of creating a schedule, I want to maybe I already know who's going to work on it, and I know that I just want to quickly assign it out. So what I can do is once the job is created, instead of creating a schedule, I can go to either my task and to-do list, and whether it's the list view or Kanban board view, this is going to work the same way. I can just create a quick task and say research needed for XYZ, and we need to do this tomorrow, and this is for the logo design job. So logo design, and you got 2 hours to do it. Yeah. And this is for the research. So I can create the first task, and then let's go ahead and create the second task. Design for logo, and this is for myself, and we need to finish this next week. And once again, it's just for the logo design, 3 hours. So this is another quick way that you can use to assign quick for small jobs. So what that does now is I can see on my dashboard, in this case, I assigned it to myself, that the 2 tasks has been created for the sample job. When I go back into the job itself, I don't actually have a full-fledged schedule created, but in my task list, I can still see the 2 different tasks that are on there with the estimated hours, and then people can track time directly against it. Yeah. So for really small jobs, there's 1 or 2 tasks, you know that who's gonna be working on it. This is probably the best way to do it. You don't have to always create a schedule inside Function Point. Okay, just use the one-off task. And once again, you can do that directly in the Kanban board view too. In fact, I think I personally like using the Kanban board view a little bit more myself, because in this case, what I can do is I can just filter to my job of that logo design. Okay. I'll be able to see all the 2 tasks I just created, but let's say we need to add one more. I can quickly create new task here. Client review. Make sure we keep it to 2 revisions, and just go ahead and mark this for the logo design and assign it to the individual, let's say Jenny. Yeah. Oh, so the reason I like this view, you can see, okay, I've added the task card has now appeared. It's gray, so meaning I didn't budget for it. I actually didn't even specify a due date either. So I can go in now and just quickly make that adjustment right on here. And the hours. Cool. So that's how you can quickly create tasks for a simple job. So I hope that helps. Don't have to always go through a schedule. Okay. So scenario number 3. So I've created this beautiful project plan for my website. I like to share that all the time with our clients as we complete the tasks, but I don't want to drown the schedule out with all the individual tasks that are on there. Because, hey, who knows? Jess is working on the job, but when she works on the design, she might like to use function point to keep her to-do list. So therefore, she keeps adding tasks to the job instead. So in this case, let's go back to the schedule we have for these multi-phase web design. So I've had this beautiful 4-phase created. I've shared it with the client, and I don't want to mess it up with any of the new tasks on here, especially that are internal. So what happens is, the cool thing you can do inside function point is, if it's a one-off task that you do need to be part of the phase, you can just go ahead and add it in here. And within the task group, say this is a new task to let clients see. Okay, and then I can go in and set the date and timeline for it. Okay, that's one way. However, if I'm working on the design and I just want to say do some research for find a stock photography. Okay. So I can do a quick task to myself and say find stock photo, and I need to have this done tomorrow, and it is for this website job. Okay. So since it's for myself, I don't really care about the hours and such. So this is my own task. And what that does is, when we look at the schedule, you're now going to see I have a new group called Ungroup Tasks. Okay. And when I expand, I can see it's from Jimmy for this find stock photo. Okay. So this is going to, once you create, the nice thing about having a project schedule is that as individuals working on the on this job create tasks for themselves, it does not mess up your actual project plan. It will just mark it as ungrouped. Okay. So that way, if I want to share to the client again, I just click on these 4, click on this share, and instead of the entire schedule, I would just select the selected items instead. Okay, so you can see that the ungrouped tasks of finding stock photos is no longer on here. Okay. All right. So that's how that's how you would be able to manage. So if you want to have a project plan that doesn't get messed up, do create a project schedule, and just let people create tasks and assign it to the job itself, and then I'll just mark it as ungrouped. Okay, so let's go through the 4th scenario. So I need to restart a chunk of work. So how can I duplicate the tasks quickly? Okay, so in this case, going back to the project website, I now have, for the design, they've decided to create 3 new pages, even though we finished it, we got the final approval. Let's say the CEO came in and decided to do that, because that never happens, right? So to create and duplicate this, and let's mark a couple of dependencies here. All I would do, instead of going in to duplicate each of the tasks individually, which you can actually select the whole group. And in the drop down here under more actions, you can just copy the entire task group. And what that does, you'll see a phase 2 design copy, revisions, and it'll have all the tasks that are created as well. Unfortunately, the dependencies don't come over. However, the assignments do. The hours of the task also gets duplicated as well. So pretty much everything does get duplicated except the dependencies. Okay, and then all you would need to do is just adjust the timeline. Okay. So if you want to duplicate tasks within a job, this is the fastest way. Go into the schedule, and this works in both the grid view or the Gantt view. So in the grid view, it's the same UI, so you'll be able to go into the group and copy it. And let's say you only wanted to actually have a couple tasks in there. I find it's always easier to copy the entire group and then delete the ones you don't want. So you just select the ones you don't want and then click delete selected. Okay. Okay, so that's the scenario for, if you need to restart a chunk of work or you need to duplicate a phase of tasks, that's probably the quickest way to do it. Okay, so last but not least, I've budgeted my jobs and tasks. So how can I monitor it to ensure it is on track? So you know that the job has a budget of 110 hours. You've assigned all the tasks out, and each task has a certain budget. So as people work on it, how can I ensure that they are updated? So let's go into the schedule. So I have a pre-built schedule here for a corporate website. So in this schedule, I have 2 phases, specification and concept, and design and production. So in the specification and concept, for each of the tasks, I have 2 columns here, a percentage completion and then estimated hours for each of the tasks. So the percentage completion will automatically be 100% once the task is marked as completed or canceled. Or if it's not completed yet, whoever is working on it can actually make adjustment to it. So I actually have 2 tasks here, this final art and coordination, that are both in progress. And the individuals has marked this as 50% complete versus 40% complete. And they had 8 hours and 12 hours respectively. You will be able to see also the actual hours based on the timesheets that they've put in as well. So to see project completion status, the grid view in the schedule is going to allow you to do that. So if not just on an individual task level, but also on a task group and the entire job. So in this case, for my specification and concept, I am 100% complete for this phase, even though with a 46 hours budget and 34 hours timesheet. Whereas the design and production, I had 77% completion overall thus far out of the 58 hours that I budgeted and 48 hours that are completed. So I'll show you how that number is calculated. So the percentage completion for that task group is based on how many hours in total we have for each of these tasks. So right now, the coordination is 12 hours, so this will weigh more and contribute more to the percentage completion compared to the final art. In fact, if I change this instead of 12 hours, I realize this is going to go to the extreme of 50 hours compared to everything else. This is going to really skew my percentage completion. So now you can see my percentage completion just drop from the 70s-ish to 63% now, because it is looking at the entire task group's estimated hours and the completion rate for each of those hours. So this is a great way to see status and phases for each of your jobs. It is the only place inside function point that will allow you to see that on a job by job basis. All right. I know that was a lot of number crunching, so hopefully that was helpful. And I'll just quickly show how these percentage, how individuals or team members can update these percentage completion on their tasks and to-do. So in my tasks and to-do list, if you have the tasks and to-do on your dashboard, if it is only 2 columns, then it won't show. So you will need to have it as a 3-column all across the board. So I'm going to create one with all 3 columns. So in this case, I now have all 3. And if I go to my own tasks, so these are the 3 tasks I have. And here's the column for percentage completion. I can just go ahead and adjust that right on here very quickly. And this will now update to your project schedule. You can also do that directly in the board view as well. So if you want to do it on the board view, all I would do is go into the card, edit mode, and the percentage completion is right here that you can edit. Okay. So that's how you'll be able to, your team members should update their task completion and how that ties back into your schedule plan as well. So from a high level, I know that I went through quite a bit of more of a basic type of overview of the scheduling and project planning inside Function Point. I hope you were, my goal is that if you can take 1 or 2 things away to help improve your day-to-day, that would be awesome. But Jess, I wanted to see, are there any questions from the group today?
Yeah, we had some good questions in terms about, when you're adding or changing things around within the schedule, being able to delete or undelete. Explain that once something's gone, it's gone, but you can just select different sections of a schedule. So if you've got a schedule template and for whatever reason, one of those phases or one of those groups don't apply for that particular job, you can just check that group and delete those. And then just a question around the estimated hours, whether they are being generated from the estimate. So they can be generated from the estimate. However, you might present the estimate to the customer with 1 set of estimated hours, and you can manage the estimated hours that appear in the schedule. So those are then more kind of related to the task itself.
Okay. In another area, you can actually look at your estimated hours versus your scheduled hours is right on your job dashboard. There's this time task overview. There is the estimated versus tasked. So the task hours is calculated based on all your schedule, all the tasks inside your schedule or the tasks that have been assigned, in progress, or completed. So this is pulling from assigned, in progress, or completed tasks. And then you can compare these 2 bars. Cool. All right, we got about 5 minutes left here. Any other questions? Okay, I think we had one for Trishana about what's the difference between a completed versus a confirmed task. So inside a task, in the status dropdown, you might have seen completed versus confirmed. So completed, of course, is when a task is done. Confirmed is another stage. So for example, the design team might have completed the design or the research and uploaded the file. And as a project manager, you can mark that as confirmed if you like. It still will mark a confirmed is a completed task stage, but named differently. And confirmed just means that, hey, I saw the design, I'm okay with it, we can really continue on. So, or it's a way for you to track also your tasks to understand, hey, which tasks have that they've marked complete that I've reviewed, and which ones have I not reviewed. Okay. Cool. All right. So I will just do one last, a couple other tips, by the way, just before we let everyone go, is when we talked about, understanding your project goals and kind of the culture of your team, but on a daily basis, as a project manager, I always say you should be looking at your project schedule on a daily basis. It's a lot of work, and I found that if I don't look at my marketing project schedules on a daily basis, you forget things. Things start falling through the cracks, and then your project plan goes completely out of bonkers. So the one thing I think that is most important from an operations perspective is always take a quick look at your project schedules on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, that's it. That's all I got for today. So I hope everyone enjoyed the webinar and was able to take one trick into your pocket as you continue using function point.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Closing words?
No, I just, you did a great demonstration, and yeah, there's a lot of functionality available within the schedules, multiple ways to use it. So if you do have any questions, reach out to your CSM, or you can also find us at the Success team as well.
Awesome. All right, well, thanks everyone for joining, and I hope you have a great day.